In Beyond the Pleasure Principle, Sigmund Freud defines the reality principle as that which limits us from immediately pursuing our pleasures. The reality principle, according to Freud, influences most of our decisions and actions. But to what extent is this true? And what are some situations where people immediately pursue their pleasures, disregarding the consequences of the future? Through this video, we hypothesize that there are three categories in which most people will let the pleasure principle override the reality principle. Through our own experiences and experiments, such as the marshmallow experiment, we notice that people tend to avoid temporary pleasure for the eventual gain of a more desirable pleasure. In Freudian terms, the temporary toleration of unpleasure is an important step down the road to pleasure. Freud interprets pleasure as a disappearance of unpleasure and as a form of satisfaction. However, due to Freud's perspective of the unpleasurable, his claims must be objective or even absolute truths in order to have significance and validity. From the perspective of another philosopher, Edmund Burke, we note that there are different definitions of unpleasure. He also introduces the concept of indifference as a state of being that does not necessarily imply an absence or gain of the unpleasurable or pleasurable. Now let's define the parameters of our pleasures and unpleasures and explore when people follow the reality principle versus the pleasure principle.
One could argue that the reality principle is based on a constant fear of pain. For example, one of our interviewees, people measure the amount of pleasure with different scales or parameters and associate these pleasures with certain activities, emotions, or persons. For example, person A may feel a more intense pleasure compared to person B if A's experience with person C is more positive. Because of these characteristics, people like different things. However, they still follow a pattern.
Yes.
Possibly.
No.
No.
Yes.
Okay. Yes.
It depends. I guess yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
The feeling after you have a test, before you get your grade, when you're entirely convinced you're going to fail, but you don't really know what you did wrong.
Walking to AB from the dorms in the rain. No.
Yeah.
Definitely.
My life is more important. Yes, I will.
It just depends on how bad the traffic is and how bad my mom's driving. If my mom's dying, I'm gonna cross no matter what.
Okay. We narrowed it down to three categories that serve as a limitation for the reality principle: love, death, and time. These three components play a central role in people's lives, but the reason why they have the capacity to break the reality principle is based on different roots. Love. The reason why love can break the reality principle is that the pursuit of love is based on pleasure itself. People tend to ignore the reality principle when it comes to loved ones. For example, a couple is more prone to having a late night conversation that will make both of them tired the next day. Yet they still choose to enjoy the pleasure of a conversation at that very same moment instead of having it at breakfast, for example. The second and third category are death and time. The reason why death and time can break the reality principle is because of the temporariness of life. It's not that people get pleasure from saving their mother, since, according to Burke, no pleasure has never its origins in pain or danger. Time, exclusively of death, also influences people to break the reality principle. For example, when we are faced with a time constraint, then we adjust ourselves accordingly. And sometimes, this time constraint makes us feel like we are given the freedom to pursue more pleasures as they are immediate and temporary.
So, we notice that people like certainty. A long-distance relationship that guarantees a happy and loving relationship until death appeals to a certain kind of people. People are unpredictable and unique with their own subjectivity. Our experience with love impacts the way in which we seek or pursue it. Our experience with death impacts the way we face and deal with it. While asking our questions, we noticed that emotions played a huge role. When we said that, you're madly in love with each other, people automatically accepted the offer. And the moment we mentioned hunger, people felt that they had to appeal to their emotion. When it came to the question that was asked about crossing the street, everyone said that they would cross it to save their mom's life. Love, death, and time are all aspects of our life that influence our decisions and pursuits of desires.